Emily, and also Kate Murdoch. The main purpose of today's event, ready an update on the phosphate issue that affects our county across Somerset, which a vast majority of you know already from previous presentations we've given the phosphate issue neutrality on planning application. We'll also give a bit of an update on other planning related matters. Before we start the presentation, just like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, so everybody can listen to it at a later date. Furthermore, it is also being uploaded onto the web, so if you don't want your image or actually caught on the camera and on the recording, please turn your cameras off. Furthermore, we'd like to also advise that we do not control these invites. They often are passed on to other third parties, so your email address may be visible on the video recording. We can't control that, unfortunately. These events, we will also circulate the slides of the presentation to everybody after the meeting, and also advise where the recording can be. As usual, we'll do the short presentation and then we'll give a lot of opportunities for question and answers sessions. So without further ado, let's move on to the agenda. As I've said, in terms of items, we're covering two matters here today. First, in terms of the phosphate update on the Somerset, Lemons and Moors, Ramsar site, and then we're going to go on to item 2 after questions in terms of additional updates related to planning. Next slide, please, Emily. As I said, these are our contact details if you want further more information. I'm joined by Kate Murdoch and also my colleague Emily Brooks. And also, if you've got any further questions, always use the phosphate inbox and the email address is there. Next slide, please. In terms of where we are, the purpose of the update is to give you an update on achieving nutrient neutral development while supporting housing growth, but also including our council phosphate P credit scheme. We'll also give 3 updates in terms of where we are on the River Tone, Broome, Parrett, how they affect the Somerset Levels of Moors Ramsar site. Furthermore, we'll also give an update on the River Axe. As most people on the call will be aware, part of the council's geographical area also coincides with the River Axe catchment area that feeds southwards and goes into East Devon District Council. We'll also give you an update on the key legislative requirements in terms of government updates before going on to giving an update on the local nutrient mitigation fund following our successful bid to central government for funding. Next slide, please. Okay. And the next one. So since we last gave our update, which was the last one was in December of 2023, we have now updated the phosphate calculator. It is uploaded onto the council's website. As with the previous version, we've had support from NACTA in England as the calculator to be used for nutrient neutrality matters across Somerset. And as such, applicants, those applicants who are using or have required the nutrient mitigation need to use the calculator. As before, it is supported by a video to explain its use. The key summaries of the changes are also documented with a supporting report. And furthermore, it contains a variety of new information regarding localized data. The Somerset calculator allows you, as I've said, to work out your mitigation requirements, and also, more importantly, post 2030. As a number of you on the call will be aware, wastewater treatment works are legally required to be upgraded by the utility companies where they serve a population of more than 2,000 population equivalents. To those ends, they have to go to TAL, and the calculator allows you to work your requirements for nutrient neutrality post 2030 as well as the current requirements. Next slide, please. Moving on, as you know, from previous presentations that we've given, Thurston Farm has become a national appeal case. It's a test case around nutrient neutrality in terms of where you have a phased planning system from outline applications to full reserve matters and then signing off. To those ends, Can somebody turn their please? Thank you very much. Just referring regard to the domestic planning appeal in August 2020, we've given a number of updates of where this is in the past. We are currently at the Court of Appeal, whereby a meeting was held on the 19th and 20th of this month, and the outcome is awaited. If you want to, you can also, we'll put in the chat the web links to view the hearing sessions if you so wish to. Next slide, please. I believe that's where I'll hand over to you, Emmeline, unless you want me to do the River Axe update.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so in terms of some updates on actions that have been sort of taking place across Somerset, so across all of the affected river catchments, we have updated our website sort of at the end of last year and published some guidance template documents and useful information. That includes a sort of guidance for applicants document, and that's intended to be a sort of one-stop shop through sort of requirements of submission documents and the process for phosphate affected planning applications in Somerset. And that will be updated as and when sort of new updates arise. And also on the website, on that link there, there is template documents including a shadow HRA template and also templates for commonly used Section 106 agreements for phosphate mitigation. So there's a sort of number of resources there for agents and applicants to use prior to submitting applications within the affected catchment areas. We'll also come on to third-party credit schemes in a little bit more detail later in the presentation, but just to make everyone aware, we have also published a web page which signposts applicants to potential options for third-party P credit mitigation schemes that are currently operating in Moore's catchment area and have agreed legal processes in place with Somerset Council to allow us to be able to process planning applications linked to those phosphate credits. So in terms of catchment area updates, we can go through each of the affected river catchment areas across Somerset and just provide a little bit of an update on actions and activities in each of those areas. So firstly, at the start of the presentation, we have the River Axe catchment area. This catchment area is hydrologically linked to the River Axe Special Area of Conservation and not the Somerset Levels and Moors. And that means some of the approaches and positions are slightly different within this catchment area. You should also be aware that Somerset Council is not the lead authority for nutrient neutrality in the River Axe catchment area, and that falls with East Devon District Council. At the moment, officers in Somerset Council and in Dorset Council are working with colleagues in East Devon on a potential bid to round 2 of the Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund. We'll obviously come on to the Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund later in the presentation to give you more of an update on that in Somerset and what the fund entails. But just to be aware that, yeah, we're working with East Devon to support them in a bid for round 2 of the fund, and the deadline for that is the 26th of April. In the River Brew catchment, so linked to the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site, there are currently approximately 16 planning applications that are currently seeking a phosphate mitigation solution, and that equates to around 800 dwellings. There are currently 2 third-party phosphate credit schemes operational in the Brew catchment with legal agreements in place with Somerset Council, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of. So we have Yew Tree Farm, which has currently allocated 45.8p credits, and that has released 453 dwellings. And a second phase of this scheme was agreed in December 2023, and reservations are being made towards that second round of the scheme, currently totaling 3.13p credits, releasing 51 dwellings. There's also a second third-party credit scheme operation in the Brew catchment at Manor Farm in Prestley. That's generated 143p credits, which is anticipated to unlock approximately 1,400 dwellings. And there is the potential for a second phase to that scheme, depending on how the first phase is trading. And in both of these cases, the calculation of those credit numbers and management plans have been agreed with Natural England and, as I mentioned, secured with the council via a Section 106 agreement, allowing us to process planning applications linked to those credits. Moving on to the River Parrett catchment, there are approximately 4,500 dwellings currently seeking a phosphate solution in the River Parrett catchment area. To date, Committee in Area South has resolved to approve 765 dwellings, and that's been linked to a variety of nutrient neutrality solutions. Quite a large proportion of those had been presented to committee for approval prior to August 2020, when the Natural England advice on nutrient neutrality came in, and therefore required redetermination after that point with phosphate mitigation in place. And then we also have a portion of dwellings in the Area South area, which are awaiting Section 106s to be completed to allow planning permission to be issued. Also, as many of you will be aware, N-Trade is operational within the River Parrett catchment, so a third-party credit scheme. N-Trade has completed 2 market rounds. Currently has 2 market rounds operational within the River Parrett catchment area, and a further round is proposed in spring 2024, so upcoming. In addition to N-Trade, there are a further 2 third-party credit schemes, actually now 3 third-party credit schemes operating in the river catchment area of the Parrett, including Woodrow Farm and Badger Street, and we have the credit generation of those 2 schemes on the slide there, and you'll see them signposted on that webpage that I mentioned here. In the River Tone catchment area, we have approximately 111 planning applications held in abeyance seeking a phosphate solution, which amounts to approximately 2,600 dwellings. We have 2 third-party credit schemes operating in the River Tone catchment area with overarching legal agreements in place, which we'll come on to. That includes Private Farm generating 60.15 credits, and a WCI septic tank to PTB upgrade scheme, which is also operational in the Brew and the Parrett. So Somerset is one of only a handful of councils across the country as well to have its own operational nutrient credit scheme. And to date, round 1 has received, in round 1 of the scheme, 12 applications have received planning permission with River Tone P credits, which has unlocked 30 dwellings. There's a further, towards the end of last year, we launched round 2 of that P credit scheme. And the plan that is various number of planning applications proceeding to acquire credit as part of those rounds. And we've also recently launched round 3 of the scheme, and to date we've received 3 applications for River Tone P credits in round 3. So as I mentioned, this is operated by Somerset Council, and operates in line with a criteria-based process, which I know a lot of you will be aware of from previous agent updates. And yeah, so progress on that is ongoing to continue to offer those P credits to as many applications as possible. So across all of the Somerset Levels and Moors catchment area, we're also seeing planning applications progressing where applicants have their own phosphate mitigation solutions, so outside of P credits. And common sources of mitigation include septic tanks, so upgrading existing poorly performing septic tanks to more efficient package treatment plant upgrades, and also other types of like land use change, such as orchard planting. And in addition, we continue to liaise with third-party credit providers to aim to create further pre-credit solutions across the catchment area. So I mentioned there's been another sort of third-party scheme recently, for example, and we will be updating our website and that webpage that I mentioned as and when further schemes come forward within each of the catchment areas. So a bit of a note as well on those third-party credit schemes. So unlike the River Tone scheme, which is managed and operated by the council, in the case of third parties, any sales and allocations are agreed between the P credit provider or promoter and the applicant. So we have no control in terms of prioritising different types of applications or the costs of those credits, which conversely we obviously do in terms of the river tone scheme. What we are generally asking applicants to provide us with is agreed allocations or reservations of third-party credit schemes via a certificate provided to us at the time that their planning application is submitted. And in circumstances where mitigation providers have what we've called an overarching legal agreement, normally a Section 106 in place with the local planning authority, what we're able to do then is planning applications linked to those credits. We're able to secure those credits via a planning condition, which basically requires the redemption of those P credits rather than requiring an additional Section 106 agreement to be put in place between the local planning authority and the applicant. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, still working with others to establish further schemes, and we'll update the webpage when further information is available. And I think now I'm handing back to Paul.
You are indeed. Thank you very much. Next slide, please, Emily. Yes, just a few updates regarding the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. That now has received royal assent, and it received royal assent on the 26th of October 23. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Act contains a statutory duty for water companies to upgrade their wastewater treatment works in designated sensitive catchment areas, nutrient sensitive catchment areas, I should say, to technically achievable limits, often referred to TAL, for nutrient removal for the period up to by 2030. What this means for phosphate is that for wastewater treatment works that serve a population equivalent of more than 2,000, they have to improve their performance with regard to phosphate to 0.25 milligrams per litre. That is the technical achievable limit, and they have to do that by 2030. The Somerset Levels and Moors, furthermore, was designated as sensitive catchment area on the 25th of January 2024. Next slide, please, Emily. So, what does this mean? Once we have confirmation from DEFRA that wastewater treatment works are required to go up by TAP to be upgraded to TAL, we will be able to consider these upgrades as certain for the purposes of the habitats regulations assessments. These are expected to be published by DEFRA at the end of May after the elections. Previously, officers have reported that it was going to be due by the 1st of April. The source of the change was our meeting yesterday with colleagues from central government and DLUC. Practical terms, as I've said, what this means after 2030 is phosphate neutrality will be required, but the levels of mitigation required are likely to be significantly less for proposed developments than they currently are. Next slide, please. Moving on, local nutrient mitigation plan. Now pass over to Kate.
Thanks, Emily. Next slide. Hoping everyone can hear me okay. So just to give a quick overview on the Local Nutrient Mitigation Fund. So the government did a call out to all areas impacted by nutrients and have made some funding available. And we submitted our bid at the end of May, working in partnership with Dorset Council as well in that bid. The government have confirmed the funding award to Somerset Council of 9.6 million, and that was just before Christmas in December 23. We've currently received £500,000 of that capital funding, with the remainder anticipated in Q1 of the next financial year, 2024-25. So we're in the process now of looking for opportunities. The funding will, of course, work as a revolving fund. So the idea is that we will put in place additional schemes to deliver phosphate credits, and then we will recover that through the sale of the phosphate credits on a cost recovery basis only, and the longer term use of that funding is then channeled into the restoration of the Somerset Levels and Moors once there are sufficient phosphate credits available to unlock housing that's impacted. We're also looking to stack benefits wherever possible to improve water quality, flood management, biodiversity net gain, and also potentially public access where that is possible. Next slide, thanks, Em. So we prepared an interim delivery strategy, and this was taken and agreed by the Strategic Planning Committee on the 21st of March last week. And it's all available on the committee web pages to see. The interim delivery strategy, which sets out an indicative delivery programme and some provisional capital allocations for each of the projects that we're currently looking to progress. The key reason we needed to take this was to demonstrate committed spend to government, despite only at this stage having received a small amount of the capital funding. We will be updating progress to the Strategic Planning Committee within the next 6 months. We'll then review the list of projects that we're progressing based on how those are moving forward and whether there are a number of trials in there as well. And we will be updating the overall delivery strategy within the next 12 months. Thanks, Em. So these are the list of projects that we've got in the interim delivery strategy at this stage. So we are working with Salinity Solutions, who operate a secondary water treatment process at the wastewater treatment works. They completed a no-cost trial in the summer last year, which demonstrated the efficacy of the units. What this 6-month trial is doing is working with them to understand what the long-term maintenance costs are for those units so that we can accurately cap cost and fully recover the phosphate credits arising from that trial. If the trial does not demonstrate good value for money in terms of the phosphate credits, then we won't be seeking to roll that out. But that's the purpose of the trial, to accurately cost and understand the maintenance arrangements for those units. The idea behind the Salinity Solutions is it uses reverse batch osmosis, which is a much more energy efficient means of treating the effluent before it then gets discharged to the river, and will be able to give us an accurate idea of kilograms of phosphates removed. Those credits, I should say again, will operate as temporary credits. So the idea is that they're bridging credits to 2030, so that some of those mitigation schemes that are in perpetuity will only need to offset at that lower level. Project 2, we're doing a call for sites, working in partnership with the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group. We're looking to launch that call for sites in May. Looking for nature-based solutions, working with landowners. We are aware there are a number of schemes currently out there that are looking to, and I'm hoping that those will come forward as part of the call for sites. And we'll provide further guidance on that as we get closer to the date. Project 3, we're working with our colleagues with our council housing stock and wider property stock, looking to introduce either water efficiency measures and or updates to septic tanks to unlock additional credits. Project 4 is looking at some of the council-owned land opportunities, again to deliver nature-based solutions to increase the supply of phosphate credits to the market. And Project 5 is working with Miscanthus Nursery. We're looking to do an initial trial to understand and evidence the opportunities for Miscanthus grass to remove legacy phosphates in the soil, but also to provide an income stream to landowners so that, again, temporary credits aren't solely reliant on the fallowing land approach, which we know is very land hungry. And ideally, we want to find a better way of moving those forward. Project 6, there's nothing identified under there. It's just a very small allocation in case within the next 6 months we are aware of other technical innovations that are coming to the market to give us an opportunity to explore those if necessary. And that's it by way of phosphates update. So just wanted to move on to the questions. Shall I go through those in the chat? I'll raise them. So Andrew Preston has raised a question about the swap credit scheme and when we might review the commencement within 3 months.
So yeah, so at the moment, obviously we're working on round 3 of the scheme. As you'll be aware, for round 3, that we still have the criteria-based approach in terms of the prioritisation of planning applications kind of eligible to access the P credits in round 3. And also for round 3 of the scheme, we have that 3-month commencement period in place. Obviously, that was put in place at the start of the scheme when it was first established a couple of years ago now, because as the council, we wanted to make sure that planning applications that were allocated those credits resulted in kind of development on the ground as quickly as possible and was allocated to those kind of more shovel-ready developments. Obviously, as time moves on and we work on whether there's going to be further rounds of the scheme, we'll be reviewing all of the criteria, including that commencement period, and it may be subject to change, but at the moment we're focused on round 3, which is the criteria in that commencement period.
I would also like to make a point that it is commencement within 3 months unless you can make a good case to us. And quite often we are very flexible in terms of making that an extension, aren't we, Emily?
Yeah, we have had cases where the commencement period's been extended, particularly sort of post permission when things happen to get on the ground.
Okay, so Amy Patterson has raised, does the council have an overarching section 106 with third-party provider Borough Environmental?
Yes, so I should have mentioned Borough Environmental in the presentation. So Borough Environmental will have a septic tank to PTP sort of upgrade scheme in place. What we have with Borough is kind of an agreed legal process. So you'll see their sign posted on our website, and we have basically an agreed process with them, which requires a Section 106 with the septic tank landowner that is completing the upgrade, and then also the applicant seeking to acquire those credits. So it's an agreed legal process that we have with them, but it does require Section 106 agreements.
Okay, Nigel, to Mrs. question, I'll pick this up. So Nigel said, how will the Salinity Solutions project benefit anyone other than Wessex Water? So it's operating as a secondary treatment process. So the Wessex Water's wastewater treatment works will still have to meet their existing permit requirements. And we're looking to put the units on, well, what we would call poor performing wastewater treatment works, in that they have a sort of 5 milligram per litre discharge permit. And we would be then removing additional phosphates from the effluent that would usually then get discharged to the river. So it's the quantity of phosphates that we are removing by way of kilograms that we will then be able to make available as temporary bridging credits to 2030, so that then the in perpetuity solutions only then need to mitigate at that lower level, which means that you can theoretically unlock far more housing with your in perpetuity solutions. But obviously the Salinity Solutions is subject to a trial at the moment, and until we've completed that and understand the true cost of a kilogram of P removal, we can't say with any certainty at this stage, but we will be rolling it out. And the funding that we were awarded was part of supporting that trial. Okay, so Tom has raised a question. If a scheme is approved now at the current offset requirements, then the 2030 upgrades happen. Can credits be sold back, sold on, and Section 106 agreements amended accordingly? Or if on-site offset has been achieved, again, schemes amended as appropriate post 2030. I think this is a question that we need to give further consideration to. In some of the discussions we've had with lots of the other local authorities, there are ongoing discussions around the temporary bridging credits point, and what happens with those existing agreements that are in place that are offsetting at that higher level. So I don't think we've got a straightforward answer to your question at this stage, Tom, but it is something that we are talking about with other local authorities, and we are aware that we're going to need to issue some guidance on this at some point. Okay, Nigel's got another question. Will Project 3 credits be available outside the RP sector?
Registered providers. I assume that.
Oh, you mean the
housing association equivalents?
It would depend on what you've got in mind, Nigel. So I would suggest maybe drop me an email and I'm happy to have a chat. But at the moment, it's only allocated to looking at supporting the upgrades to council housing stock, and we're exploring possible support for the registered providers. But if I'm happy to have a conversation if you think there's some other opportunities. Adrian, so in terms of on-site SUDS, that is part of developers are able to deliver on-site SUDS as part of their phosphate mitigation. But yes, we often meet with other councils through the Planning Advisory Service. They coordinate meetings and we share learning and experience with the range of other mitigation projects that other areas are delivering. Jess, where do we obtain a certificate to prove credits are agreed to be purchased?
That would be from the P credit provider. So whatever third party that you're dealing with, they would be responsible for, well, you'd have to liaise with them to get appropriate kind of proof of purchase or reservation of credits. Unless obviously it's the council scheme and then we'd provide that.
Okay, I can't see any other questions.
Shall we open it up to the floor? Or any people want to get?
Anyone want to raise their hand and come in? Councillor Dunn?
Yes, I just scribbled a note in the chat. Yes, it's to do. I had a radio program on Radio 4, of course, about the problems that housing, increased levels of housing have contributed to sewage release by water companies during sort of high levels of rainfall. And I wondered if that was considered a problem. It's obviously not necessarily considered a planning problem at the moment because we're talking about mitigation, but how about prevention? Because I'm assuming that the release of sewage into the watercourses may be exacerbating the problem on the levels. And I don't know whether there's a view taken on this, but obviously we don't have the planning regulations in force to be able to make new homes have water storage in order to partially stop increasing the problem at source in a way. I wonder if there's anything that you can tell me about that.
Well, that's part of new development delivering sustainable urban drainage systems, Councillor Dunk, but that hasn't applied historically to a number of schemes, which I understand has then exacerbated some of the problems that we're now seeing with the heavy rainfall events that we're getting that are then leading to combined sewage overflows discharging on a more regular basis. But that's a wider national issue, and probably not something that we can address in this session today.
Well, I know maybe not today, but it does seem to be relevant. And if we're making people do other things to new builds, it seems logical that they should be at least doing the best practice. I mean, in Europe they do it, I don't see why it can't be done here. It does make housing more expensive, and I do appreciate that could be a problem. But yeah, I thought I'd ask the question, but thanks for your response.
Can't see any other hands up. So shall we move on to the only other item we've got is some updates. I just wanted to update everyone on the validation guidance, just to let you know that obviously the consultation period for that has now closed, and we're currently reviewing those consultation responses, and we will update as soon as we're able to with that. Graham, did you want to come in with any biodiversity net gain update that you've got?
Yeah, no problem. I've not got any slides to show or anything. I just want to give a bit of a reminder, really, in terms of biodiversity net gain. The requirement for major development came in back in February. That extends to now apply to small sites from Tuesday next week. Hopefully people are aware of that already and have managed to catch up if they weren't at the last session where we talked about that. So that is in play from next Tuesday. That means that any applications made after that point, it applies to. A reminder what we're taking made to mean, because the regulations helpfully don't explain that, is submitted and then subsequently found valid. So effectively, that means if you've got a planning application that is submitted today, but it's missing lots of information, and we ask you to provide that. As long as you provide that information within the 28-day period that we normally allow for, then you're fine. You're not going to be subject to B&G. But if you miss that, and therefore we return the application to you, and then you have to submit further down the line, you will get caught by B&G in that situation. In terms of the challenge involved in validation, I know that's a concern amongst the development industry, that this is going to create lots of delays. Inevitably, that will be the case. There will be delays to start with. It's quite a big change. We've been working closely with the validation officer team to help make sure that they're ready for this, and those that have received major applications have had a bit of a head start in terms of how this will work. But from Tuesday next week, it's obviously significantly increases the number of applications where checks need to be made, etc. So we've been working with them to help make sure they're up to speed with what needs checking at validation period, making sure that issues that are actually about consideration of the detail of that are not dealt with at validation. They are put forward to and considered at the point once it's been valid. But there will need to be some patience over this coming period on both sides to help kind of smooth that forwards. One thing that we've done in the last couple of weeks, and it's only just gone up on the website yesterday. I'll just share my screen to show you. Is my screen sharing? I'm sharing up the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, this is our Biodiversity Net Gain webpage. There's lots of information in here if you've not been there already. Got information on just the basics, including there's a non-technical summary guide, which is sort of distilling our guidance note down into the key points that you might need to be aware of over sort of 4 pages. There's information about what is relevant in terms of major and small development and exemptions, where you can find out more information. There is also further information about our validation requirements, which, like I've said before, we are requiring more information than the basic national minimums there. What we've uploaded yesterday is a template for the B&G statement to help ensure that you are able to understand exactly what you need to capture within that. And it should hopefully help speed things up in terms of validation as well, if that template is used. So definitely recommend looking at that and using that if possible. There is also the template for the declaration form, which is effectively another way of trying to speed up the validation aspect by you effectively declaring that you have provided all of the information that you should have. That enables us to kind of move things forward quicker, particularly for those smaller developments as they come in. And you've also got some slides from previous Agents Forum up on there that you can have a look at as well. So yeah, hopefully that's useful. The only other thing I wanted to just raise awareness of was about we're hoping to launch in sort of around 6 weeks or so, probably a call for sites. So this was not your traditional call for sites in terms of housing supply and employment land supply, but more about an environmental call for sites. So this will be for phosphate development, for phosphate schemes, but also for biodiversity net gain schemes. And the intention is that we use that process to help assess sites against really clear and transparent criteria, which we'll obviously publish with the call. And then we'll use that to help prioritize sites so that we can take through sites that will deliver the best outcomes, I suppose, and are ready to go as quick as possible through the Section 106 negotiation. And it just helps us to manage our resources, but hopefully also leads to better outcomes off the back of that. Yeah, I think that's probably it. So happy to take any questions on that if there are any.
There are in chat.
Are there any things in the chat? Sorry.
There is one in the chat, Graham. Self-builders exemptions for B&G, are they likely to want to condition self and custom builds or other exemptions in relation to B&G?
So it's exactly the same, dealt with exactly the same as any other aspects of self-build in the planning process. So if you are also, obviously it depends where in Somerset you are, then, but you'll be also looking to be exempt from SIL. So it's the same requirements. You may also be looking to kind of claim self-build exemption from other things as well. So it's the same stuff. And if you are claiming that you are, then we will likely look to condition it in that regard, so that we can ensure that it remains as self-build in relation to the conditions that it needs to be.
Thank you, Graham. Very clear.
Any? Oh, there's a hand up. Can't see who that is. Sorry. Or is it you, Paul?
I'm just going. It probably is me. In fact.
Oh, no, Councillor Clark. No, it was.
A question for Graham, please. Graham, all those templates and documents that mentioned in that little list, you were flicking through them very quickly and I couldn't pick them out individually. But are they going to be included in what I currently use as the validation document? Are they all in there as a combined document, or are they addendum to that document, or are they completely separate?
So back in beginning of February, we took the validation requirements alongside the guidance note through the Planning and Transport Policy Subcommittee. They are adopted as an addendum to the validation checklists as they are. We will absorb those requirements into each of the area validation checklists as we update them, though. So when
when I do a validation, when I click on the validation checklist, I've got everything in front of me. I don't need to go searching around for different bits of paper.
Not at the moment. So that's the point. So if I bring my screen up again, I can show that. Get to the right bit before I do. Information requirements. There we go. Share. Okay, is that showing again?
Yes, it is, Graham.
Yeah. So when you go on our website, you can navigate through the making a planning application area to the information requirements. You select your area that you're based on. It then gives you information about the existing local validation checklist. That, in all cases at the moment, does not include anything to do with biodiversity net gain, because they're all adopted a little while ago. As Kate's mentioned, we've obviously just had our consultation about updating some of those validation checklists, and those consultations included biodiversity net gain requirements. So once they have been adopted, they will have that integrated within the validation checklist. In the meantime, there is a separate bit. If you carry on down biodiversity net gain, it's got the specific biodiversity net gain validation requirements are linked on that same page, but they are not within the full validation checklist. They're in addendum 2.
Okay.
Does that make
And
sense?
when will they be part of, so we just have one single checklist to go to, Graham?
As and when they get updated. Like I say, we've just done the consultation for West and Minerals and Waste, I think. Can't remember, sorry. And so they are integrating those things as we speak. So once they are adopted, they will have it integrated. But the validation checklists for North, East and South, they are not being updated right now. So they will remain as a separate addendum until the point that they get updated.
Okay.
Obviously, they're all at kind of different points of needing to be updated, with the 2-year kind of requirement that there is.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Graham.
Okay.
Okay, I think there's one other question that we haven't yet picked up, which is Andrew Preston was asking about an update on DM staffing. Andrew, I just want to say that at the moment the planning service is going through a restructure, so those details will be provided in due course. Okay, Andre, did you want to come in and provide an update on the Mendip?
Yes, good afternoon. Good morning still. I've got a few slides. So this is really just an update on the work on the update to the Mendip local plan. So again, it will only affect the Somerset East area, but those obviously deal with sites in Somerset East will be aware that we've been doing some further work to meet the requirements of a High Court order to find some additional housing sites. But it is a somewhat unusual exercise, but that there is a consultation out at the moment. So I'll share briefly this. As I say, this exercise is one of the elements of local plan work, which was included in the local development scheme, but it is a sort of self-contained piece of work, and it isn't really a first stage of the Somerset plan, but the consultation is now out at the moment. Just to highlight, it is a formal update to the Mendip local plan, so it has to go through the stages of this consultation, a publication consultation and submission to the Secretary of State. However, it's quite limited in its scope. We have to identify sites which could accommodate 500 dwellings, and there's quite a bit of information in the consultation documents on the background to that. It's not a review of the Mendip policies. It also doesn't involve the sites which are already allocated. I think most will be aware the Mendip local plan part 2, it was agreed essentially that remains an adopted document, as the sort of full weight of an adopted document. It's just this additional element that has to be done to update it as directed by the High Court. So also just note that because the legal challenge takes us back to a point when the local plan inspector at the time made decisions in 2019, there is scope to include some sites which already have permission. I think the additional issue for us is that the Mendip local plan period runs to 2029. So very much the emphasis of this exercise is what can be delivered by that date. So this is
although there are similarities to the full local plan exercise we'll carry out for Somerset, it's on a very short timescale. So that does make the conclusions somewhat different to a wider exercise. Some of you will be aware that we did an update to our call for sites last year. So where land has been confirmed as available, we have published our assessments of those. Again, bear in mind that is not assessment to cover a normal plan period, which is 15 to 20 years. It's also worth noting that whilst we might say a site isn't suitable in this exercise, that will form part of our evidence base across Somerset for the no available land. And very much this is about comparing almost all the sites that were suggested as available against the strategy. So you'll see within the documents that we've set out a process which is pretty similar, I suppose, what we'll eventually go through about about following the same process that I've identified in local plan part 1. So we're not rewriting the strategy. This is not an update of the housing numbers for Mendip. So that there is site assessments done on the sites that were promoted to us, as well as sustainability appraisal. It's just a brief look at this. So it's a fairly comprehensive exercise for what is quite a limited update. Document itself identifies sites, and we're required to identify the sites specifically to meet that 500 homes. Most of the sites have permission, and again that reflects our view that we need to be identifying sites which can be delivered by the end of the plan period. It's not a full review. That's very much a task for the future Somerset plan. And we're not really changing any of the existing policies except in the local plan near Street, where one of the sites was there was an area identified for future growth, which we can consider might now be added to the existing allocation. So that's the only change to existing policy. On our Mendip local plans page, you'll find all the settlements that were put to us. It's probably worth mentioning at this stage, because we've already included some windfall in our adopted plan, most of the smaller sites are out of scope of this exercise. So the ones below 5 dwellings haven't been included at this point because we've already made an allowance for them in the local plan part 2. You'll find the sustainability appraisal, which is also out for consultation, and its scoping report, and summaries of all the sites that we've looked at, including maps and the conclusions from the assessments. That consultation is live now, and it closes on the 12th of April. We've got a very tight deadline to follow, so we don't have a lot of allowance to go much beyond that. And with the plan to report any changes to Planning and Transport Committee in June, and then there'll be a pre-submission consultation ahead of submission in the autumn. Again, clearly we want to get this exercise completed as far as we can, because obviously we want to focus on the main event, which will be the Somerset plan. In terms of links, if you've got any questions about the consultation or you want to submit responses, you can use our email to the Policy East team. There is a link, there is a full questionnaire, which if you have time, that will be our preferred way to respond to the consultation. And you'll find all those documents on the adopted local plans page for the Mendip area. Sometimes you get that directly, sometimes it will ask you to look for Somerset East, and it will take you to the page with all those documents. But the key date really is the 12th of April to respond to us. And as I say, if there are sites, I've had some queries about sites where, I mean, you can still submit land to us. We'll continue to update the call for sites and available land ongoing. So you may feel you've got land you want to make us aware of. You can still submit that in the normal way, and that will be part of the evidence base for the wider development plan exercise in due course. So those are the slides. Just again, it's the 12th of April, and again to admit that this is only for the former Mendip area.
Any questions for Andre on the Mendip plan? Can't see any in the chat. Oh.
It's come in.
So, Mark, as I see the Mendip site allocations consultation is referred to as Reg 18 consultation on the basis that this does not relate to a new local plan. Am I correct to assume Somerset East will not become a 4-year?
Yeah. That's correct. This isn't an exercise that will, because we are not reviewing the housing numbers in isolation from the rest of Somerset. This isn't an exercise which will address those provisions about becoming a 4-year supply area. So this doesn't really change the 5-year supply position.
See any hands up?
Okay, I can't see any more hands up. Councillor Dunk, the recording of this briefing.
It will be uploaded to YouTube.
It'll be uploaded to YouTube.
And
usually circulate.
Yeah, we can circulate a link afterwards. That.
Okay. So I will. There isn't anything else that anyone wants to raise. I'll draw the meeting to a close, and I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. And we will circulate a link to the recording after this session. Okay. Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks.